Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the weekly Chabura. This week's Parsha is Parshas Vayechi. So I will actually be discussing a little bit from Vayigash and also obviously from Vayechi, because there's a correlation between the things I want to discuss regarding Yosef HaTzadik. Last week we actually gave a shiur on the greatness of Yosef HaTzadik, and I want to continue with that theme. So I will call last week's shiur 1 on Yosef HaTzadik, and today's shiur will be shiur number 2. And like I always do, I'd like to thank Chazaq and Torah Anytime for everything that they do. I would also like to dedicate this week's shiur to a good chavra of mine, Rabbi Avrohom Walkin, who truly inspires me. And whenever I meet with him to discuss Torah, I hope we both leave inspired. So I want to dedicate this particular shiur to Rabbi Avrohom Walkin. I also want to dedicate it to a Talmud of mine who really has made a very big, tremendous difference in my life the last 4 or 5 months in my avodas HaKodesh, and my avodas to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and his name is Rabbi Yosef Mansour, who is steiging in Eretz Yisrael and every week continues to grow more and more. And it's a true inspiration to be able to learn with him and deal with him on a daily basis. So before we get into Parshas Vayechi, I want to discuss something from Parshas Vayigash. We know that in Parshas Vayechi, Yaakov Avinu is on his deathbed. He's deathly sick. And he calls Yosef to meet with him. And the messengers go out to Yosef, and Yosef brings Ephraim and Manasseh. But like I mentioned in last week's parsha, I just want to reiterate that for the 17 years that Yaakov Avinu was in Mitzrayim with Yosef, Yosef did not visit his father one time, not even one time. Which means that Yaakov Avinu met Yosef that first time that he met him. He said Shema, and he saw that Yosef remained the tzaddik that he was. From that day on, for the next 17 years, Yosef did not visit his father at all. And you don't see anywhere that it was questioned from Yaakov Avinu's end why Yosef never visited him. And the question is, why didn't Yosef visit him? So Chazal tell us that Yosef was worried that his father would start asking him about what happened, how he got down to Mitzrayim, and therefore Yosef would have to tell his father of the selling of the Mechiras Yosef and everything that happened, transpired from that sale. And Yaakov would be obviously very upset at the brothers, and obviously, Chas v'shalom, maybe he would even, curse them, if I may say something like that. But it wouldn't be good for the brothers. But you don't see anywhere that Yaakov was upset at Yosef, because Yaakov knew that Yosef didn't want to say. And the Rebbe-Talmud relationship that Yaakov and Yosef had was being built at the same time. Yosef never visited his father because he knew his father wouldn't want him to visit him, so he wouldn't have to say on his brothers. And at the same time, Yaakov was happy that Yosef did not visit him, so that Yosef would still develop that great midah that he had of self-control. But anyway, Yaakov was on his deathbed. And I want to go back a little bit to something Reb Chaim Shmulevitz brought down in last week's Parsha, that at the time, Yaakov was 147 years old. And in reality, Yaakov should have lived to 180, like Yitzchak lived to 180, or to 175, like Avrohom Avinu lived. And really, Avrohom Avinu was also supposed to live to 180 years. But because Hashem did not want Avram to have to suffer to see what became of Esav, Hashem Rachmanus took away 5 years of Avram's life, that he shouldn't have to see his grandson Esav become the Rasha that he became. And we do know that people, when they come time to the father's age where they lived in the olden days at least, people should worry. Chazal tell us that a person will leave during that period of time, within 5 years before, 5 years after. So here Yaakov was only 147. He didn't live to the 175 and 180 of Yitzchak and Avraham. And the question is, why didn't he live? So Reb Chaim Shmulevitz brings down a medrash and says that when Yaakov Avinu came to Paro for the first time, Yaakov looked very old. He looked very, very old. And some Mefarshim actually say that this was the same Avram Avinu of that time, of when Avram Avinu met with Paro. Some people say it was the same Paro. But whatever the case was, Paro thought that this old man that was before him, who happened to be Yaakov, he thought he looked so old in his eyes that maybe it was Avram Avinu. So he asked him, how old are you? Kama yemei shnei chayach, how old are you? So I'm just going to say the words of the pasuk. Vayomer Yosef es Yaakov Aviv Yamideu Lifnei Para Vayivarach Yaakov is Para. Vayom Para El Yaakov. Kama Yemei Shnei Chayecha. How old are you? How many years have you been living on earth? Because you look so old. Vayom Yaakov Apara Yemei Shnei, the days, my years and the days of my life, Magure, that I sojourned. Shoshimu Me'ashana, at that time was 130 years. Ma'at V'roim Hayu Yemei Shnei Chayai. My years were troubled and they were difficult, and therefore I looked the way I looked. Now, I just want to go back. A few weeks ago, there was a meaningful minute that was posted of something that I brought down. I was zocha to reach the level of getting on a meaningful minute. And I brought down how a person can do kiruv without even saying a word. Why? Because a person's face is the greatest kiruv that a person could do. What does that mean? That when a person walks around and he has a pa'anim za'ufais, he's downtrodden, and he shows that he suffered on his face, it shows that he suffered, then people look and say, this man was a ben Torah, this man was a Talmid Chacham, this man did everything Hashem wanted pretty much, and look at him, he looks worn out, he looks torn, it looks like he suffered. Therefore, I remember saying that a face is a Rishus HaRabim. A face is a Rishus HaRabim. A person has to realize that when he walks in the street and people know that he's a Ben Torah and people know that he serves Hashem, or a Jew that serves Hashem and to the outside world, he has to show in his face happiness, because people should not know that he's suffering because of what he goes through. And over here, Yaakov Avinu told Paro that the years of his life was actually bad. And from that, he lost 33 years. Reb Chaim Shmulevitz brings down, because if you look at the answer of Yaakov Avinu when he answered Paro, and you add the question that Paro asked Yaakov, it adds up to 33. So Reb Chaim Shmulevitz says, why was he punished 33 years? Why was he punished for the question? So he answers because it was noticeable on his face that he aged, and that's why Paro asked him, how old are you? So because of the question that Paro asked, Yaakov was punished X amount of years for the question too. Because like I said, a face is a Rishus HaRabim. And someone on Yaakov's level, and I'm not here to chas v'shalom judge, but this is what Chazal tell us, someone on Yaakov's level, it should never have been noticeable that he even suffered, that he aged because of his suffering. Of course he suffered, but he got punished for the question too, not just for his answer. So we see again the importance of a person's face being a Rishus HaRabim, and therefore Yaakov Avinu at the age of 147 knew that his days were numbered. He felt sick. He knew that he asked the Eibusher that a person should get sick before he passes away. He was one of the three. Avram asked that a person should age. Yitzchak asked that a person should suffer before, so that he doesn't lose his olam haba, or he gets more olam haba and he suffers more in this world. And Yaakov asked that a person should get sick before he dies, so that a person should actually be prepared before his Yom HaMisa, so that he can do tshuva, he can prepare his family members in what he has to prepare them. So we do see that Yaakov Avinu got aged at 147, and he knew that his days were numbered. So it says that he calls over Yosef, he calls over, Yosef brings Ephraim and Manasseh. But I always like to say over a story, which I did not say over yet. So I will tell you a wonderful story that I think I once said before, many, many, many months ago. But I think it's up for a renewal, as we say. And it's regarding a pasuk in this week's parsha. In this week's parsha, after Yaakov Avinu was nifter, it says, "Vayal Yosef likbar es aviv." Yosef went up to bury his father, and Chazal teaches that Yosef himself took care of the burial, even though all the other brothers were involved, and all the other brothers got involved in the burial of Yosef. But Yosef took special care that he should be the one that was involved with every detail in Yaakov's burial in Me'aras HaMachpelah. And Chazal tell us that because of that, Yosef was zocha. Yosef was zocha that Moshe Rabbeinu himself took care of Yosef's burial later on, many years later when they left Mitzrayim. So because of the Midah Keneged Midah that Yosef took care of Yaakov Avinu personally, Moshe Rabbeinu took care personally of the burial of Yosef after they left Mitzrayim and after the waters came up from the Yam Suf, from the ocean, from the Yarden, from the Nile River. So I want to mention a story, a beautiful story that I remember. Like I said it months ago. It has to do with Rav Shach, Zatzal, someone that I was there many times to see, many times to visit. Not as much as I would have liked, but enough times that he left an impact, of course, on me, knowing that I visited such a big tzaddik, such a big Rosh Yeshiva like Rav Shach. And the story goes like this. It's actually brought down in Pesach Kron's book. I think it's brought down in Reflections of the Maggid, if I'm not mistaken. And the story goes like this, that Rav Shach, when he was very old, and he was already sick, and he was on towards the end of his life, he called over one of his Talmidim, one of his grandchildren, I think it was being Meshamishim, and he said, I need to go get my coat, I need to go to a certain Levaya. I need to go to a certain Levaya that's in Haifa. Very important that I go. His grandson, the Talmud, tried to dissuade him from going because it was raining outside, it was very cold, and in Eretz Yisrael, when it gets winter and it rains, the wind chill, somehow, for some reason, it gets into the bones, Maybe because the apartments are made from marble or from a certain type of stone, but it gets very cold. And this Talmud didn't want Rav Shach to go out in such a weather. But Rav Shach was very adamant, I must go to this Levaya. Anyway, Rav Shach goes to Levaya. It took like an hour and a half to 2 hours to get to the Levaya. And there was maybe 10, 15 people by this Levaya, and it was an old woman. It was an old woman, the Levaya of an old woman. So there was around 10 people, enough for the minyan. And when everybody left, Rav Shach actually took time to stand by the caver himself. He told his people that went with him, please go back in. I need to stand a few minutes here alone by the caver with the rain pouring on his clothing and getting him almost sick, chas v'shalom. But he needed to spend a few moments. And he said Tehillim there. He said Tehillim for 3-4 minutes. And then he went back into the car. Of course, the people that went with Rav Shach, including this Talmud, this grandson, was wondering what was going on and what was so important that Rav Shach would even almost, give up, put his life, not saying in jeopardy, but chas v'shalom, he can get sick from this. Why? What was so important that Rav Shach felt he had to be at this Levaya? So Rav Shach begins to tell them a story. And he said when he was 12 years old, there was a certain yeshiva that he heard, his mother heard, because his father passed away. Rav Shach's father passed away when he was much younger. He heard, the mother heard of a certain yeshiva that was opening up, and it was looking for top Talmidim. They were looking for Eluyim, brilliant kids. And Rav Shach's mother knew that he was a brilliant kid, and she sent him. She sent him at 12 years old to this yeshiva. And it was a type of yeshiva that you didn't come home for a year. Like in most yeshivas in Europe, you didn't come home every few weeks. You didn't come home, there was only, off Shabbosim. You stayed for the year till you got home. Maybe you'd come home Pesach time, maybe you'd come home maybe even twice a year. But Rav Shach was there for a period of time, and he got there during the summertime. But it was a very, very poor yeshiva. The yeshiva that had no means, like most yeshivas didn't have the proper means that they should have been supported by. And food was very scarce, and the people that slept, the yeshiva bachrim that were in the yeshiva, the top guy slept on a hard bench, and the younger bachrim slept on the floor, which was a luxury. To sleep on the floor was more luxurious than sleeping on a bench in the Beis Medrash. And that was the poverty. That was the poverty in the yeshiva at the time. So during the summer, like I said, it wasn't terrible, but in the winter it became very, very cold. And Rav Shach, at the age of 12 and a half, it was hard for him, very, very hard for him. He receives a letter from an uncle of his that found out that it was difficult for him in the yeshiva. And this uncle told him, come to America. I have a parnas over there. You'll work for me. You'll be able to send money to your mother and even bring her back to America. We'll all come together and come to the Golden Medina called America. Come to the Golden Medina called America. And this letter came on a Wednesday. Rav Shach replied, and basically he said, I'm coming. It was difficult for him to be in the yeshiva. He missed his home. The coldness of the winter was very difficult for him. And he decided he was going to leave the yeshiva. Decided he was going to leave and go to America to be with his uncle, and then his mother will come afterwards. And they'll start a financial future. That Friday, he was supposed to leave on a Sunday on a boat. That Friday, a woman comes to the Rosh Yeshiva. Her husband passed away at a very young age. She was also very young. She had no children. And her husband used to sell down coats and down blankets. But now that he passed away, she was going to move back to her hometown to be with her parents. She was very young, 23, 22 years old. Her husband was trampled, I think, up with a horse and buggy or something. And she wanted to go back, but she wanted to donate these blankets and pillows to the blankets and coats to the Bakram Yeshiva. So Rav Shach was zeicha that he got one of the blankets. And that Friday night, he recalls Rav Shach, how well he slept and how warm he slept. And he took it as a sign from Hashem that he should not go to America and become a balabas, which is nothing wrong with being a balabas, but considering who Rav Shach was and what he accomplished for Klal Yisrael, obviously it was greater what he did than doing some other profession. And he remembered the warmth that he felt, and he felt this was a sign from Hashem that he should remain. and he became Rav Shach. He became Rav Shach. And this woman was the Levaya of that woman that gave that blessing. And Rav Shach was always finding out information, how she was doing. He was always involved in helping her. She never remarried. But Rav Shach felt that he needed Hakaras HaTov to go and be at her Levaya. So why did he stand outside? He said, in order for me to have the proper Hakaras HaTov that I should have, he felt that he needed to be able to stand there in the rain and feel that cold that he felt when he was 12 and a half years old, sleeping on the floor. In order for him to have that proper Hakaras HaTov he should have for this woman, Rav Shach felt he would stand outside for 2-3 minutes in the rain so he could feel that cold, in order that he should have the proper Hakaras HaTov to this woman. In order to have felt what he felt like in those days, then he could appreciate what became of him and the Hakaras HaTov that he has to this woman. So that's the story I wanted to bring down. Now I want to get back now to this week's parasha regarding Yosef HaTzadik. Yosef, that was given the term tzaddik for all the self-control that he had, especially regarding the control by ishus with women, the way he controlled himself in Mitzrayim all the years that he was there. And like last week, we discussed a little bit into it, the greatness of Yosef. I will want to mention something that I did mention in Parshas Beshalach, that when Moshe Rabbeinu brought Yosef's bones with him to the Yam Suf, the water didn't want to split for Klal Yisrael, it says. The water didn't want to split. Then it says, the pasuk tells us, Vayar Hayam, the waters soar, Vayonas, and the waters ran away. So the question is, what does it mean the waters ran away? It should say, Vayibaka Hayam, the water split, like it says in Hallel, the lashon of Vayibaka Hayam, that the water split. What's the lashon Vayonas, that the waters ran away? Usually the word baka is used on something that's not alive. Split, cut in half. Vayibaka, it split. Vayonas means it retreated, it ran away, which is used on something that's chai, that's living. So Chazal tell us, what's the Vayar Hayam Vayonas? So Chazal tell us that, what did it see? The water didn't want to split for Klal Yisrael. It said they did Avodah Zarah, the Mitzrayim did Avodah Zarah. We are not going to go against our nature and split for the Bnei Yisrael. Unbelievable. And Hashem didn't answer them, say, too bad, I told you to do it, you do it. Hashem didn't say a word about it. The water didn't want to do it, Hashem didn't say a word. So then what did Moshe Rabbeinu do? He showed the Aron of Yosef to the water. Vayar Hayam, what did it see? Vayonas, it saw the Vayonas. It ran away. What running away did it see? It saw the Vayonas Achutza of Yosef. It saw that when Yosef was being attacked by Potiphar's wife to Chas v'Shalom to do something, Yosef ran out. It says Vayonas Achutza, he ran outside, he ran outdoors. Therefore, Vayar Hayam, what did the waters see? Vayonas. It saw the Arono Shel Yosef, it saw the Vayonas, that Yosef went against his nature, against anyone's nature, and he ran outside, so the waters said, we'll split also. We're going to split because of the Arono Shel Yosef. But what did it see? Vayar Hayam. What did it see? Vayonas. It's all the Vayonas of Yosef. So Yosef's great self-control is very evident in many, many different aspects of the parsha. And like I mentioned last week also, that the fact that Yaakov asked Yosef to bury him in this week's parsha, he tells Yosef, bury me, don't bury me in Mitzrayim. Bury me in Marsa Machpelah. But Rashi says, Yodani shesh belibcha alai. I know it still bothers you till this very day that I never buried your own mother, Rachel Imenu. I never buried her in Marsa Machpelah. Where did I bury her? On the side of a road. But Yaakov tells Yosef, I know it still bothers you till this very day why I did it. But you never questioned me. You never questioned me. And there again, Rebbe-Talmud relationship. Yosef easily could have asked his father, not with a ta'ana, a question, why, how could you? But just give me the reason why. I'm sure there's a reason. He buries his mother on the side of the road. Yaakov is buried Rachel on the side of the road. And Yosef never questioned his father, because you see, Yaakov says, Yodani sheyesh belibcha alai. I know it still bothers you, but no, I did it for a reason, that one day she's going to be used, Klal Yisrael is going to go out in the gullus, and they're going to stop over there, and they're going to daven over there. But you see the great midah that Yaakov is still building Yosef till the very last moment. He was building him to the very last moment, that what? Self-control, that Yosef, it still bothers him, but we don't ask on a father. He wasn't going to ask on his father because he knew his father had a reason, and if his father didn't tell him the reason, then it wasn't meant for him to know the reason. And therefore, Yosef, till the very last moment, was being built and growing from his Rebbe, his great Rebbe, his father, till the very last moment. Yaakov was building Yosef. Yosef was being built by Yaakov. So why now did he tell him, like we said in last week's shiur? Now he felt the contradiction would be too much for Yosef. He tells him to do something that he didn't do for his mother. The contradiction, even on Yosef's level, you can't ask somebody to do something if you didn't do it for that person. Therefore, he felt that I can't ask Yosef to bury me Arsa Machpelah if it still bothers him, which I know it does, because I didn't do it to his mother. So therefore, we see how important it is for a parent, a rebbe, a mechanech, to not contradict his own words. I've been guilty of this many times growing up with my own children, that you tell them to learn when they don't see you learning enough, or you tell them getting up for davening and maybe you don't get up on time the way you should. Don't give mussar if you don't back it up with your own actions. Do as I do and not as I say. Very, very important. Just don't do and expect your children to do if you don't do it yourself. So therefore, Yaakov Avinu had to tell Yosef right now what happened, why he buried her on the way. But I want to just go, before I get into the ending of what I want to discuss about Yosef HaTzadik, I want to mention something, that when Yosef brings Ephraim and Menashe, Yaakov Avinu tells Yosef that B'chol Yevarech Yisrael, you, Ephraim and Menashe, will Klal Yisrael bless their children in the future. As you know, when parents give their children brachos Friday night, Erev Yom Kippur, before Chagim, they always say, Yesimcha Elokim ke Ephraim and Menashe. And where do we get that from? There's a pasuk. B'chol Yevarech Yisrael, Yaakov tells Yosef about Ephraim and Menashe, Leimo Yesimcha Elokim ke Ephraim and Menashe, that Hashem should make you like Ephraim and Menashe. So the obvious question is, why? Why Ephraim and Menashe? Why not Yisimcha Elokim ke Avram and Yitzchak? Why Yisimcha Elokim like Moshe, Aaron, Yosef? I mean, Moshe was living then. But why do we bless our children like Ephraim and Menashe, and not like Moshe, or not like Avram and Yitzchak and Yaakov, Yosef? Why? Because Ephraim and Menashe grew up in a very bad place. They grew up in Mitzrayim, a very evil, very tumadika place, contaminated, filth, spiritually filthy place. Yet they remained Ephraim and Menashe. They remained the holy people that they were. Therefore, Yaakov Avinu tells Yosef, and in the Galus, bless your children. Klal Yisrael should always bless their children. They should be like Ephraim and Menashe, because just like Ephraim and Menashe, they remain tzaddikim. We bless our children in the Galus, the filth of the Galus that we live in, they should remain steadfast and strong like Ephraim and Menashe. Therefore, that is the apropos bracha to give to someone's children, that in the gullus we live in the difficulties, in what we are faced, the challenges we faced at the end of the gullus that we're in, the challenges we're faced all around us, through the internet, through walking in the streets, through whatever it is. The challenges, you should remain steadfast like Ephraim and Menashe. And now we're going to end with Yosef, but I want to end with two actual midrashim. One is a Yalkut Shimoni, and the other one is a Medrash Rabbah. And I'll tell you, last Friday night, I went to bed at 7 o'clock knowing that I usually have guests. 7:30, I finished my meal quickly, I didn't have guests. But I knew my guests were coming at around 9, 10 o'clock, because I usually have Friday night. Many people show up, they take rotations. From 9 o'clock, literally till 1 o'clock Friday night, I have bunch of Bali Tshuva come, I have many Talmidim for my son, we have Baruch Hashem for bring. So I wanted to chop around an hour of sleep, maybe before they come, like from 7:30 to 8:30. So I went to lie down, but I couldn't sleep, because this Yalkut Shimoni, I needed to find this Yalkut Shimoni. I remembered it for years, I remembered it. So I went to a certain shul next door to me, they didn't have it. So I took out the Medrash Rabbah. And the Medrash Rabbah brings down something similar, but not the Yalkut Shimoni, but we're going to do both quickly. The Medrash Rabbah, and we're going to read it inside, and the Yalkut Shimoni, and then we'll end with that. And with that, we'll see again the greatness of Yosef HaTzadik. So it says like this. It says, there's a pasuk in the Torah that says like this about regarding Yosef, when Yaakov's blessing Yosef and telling him the greatness of obviously who Yosef was. He tells Yosef, his son, he says, Ben Parat Yosef, Ben Parat Ale Ayin. That what? That a charming son is Yosef. Ben Parat Yosef, Ale Ben Parat Ale Ayin, a charming son to the eye. So the Medrash on this goes on to continue to say on this pasuk, that it says, Banos Sa'ada Ali Shor. Sorry, the pasuk says this. Banos Sa'ada Ali Shor, the daughters climbed heights to gaze. And that refers to when Yosef would travel through the streets of Mitzrayim in his horse and chariot. As the viceroy, the king, women would throw ornaments, women would throw flowers at him, just that he should look up one moment at them, gaze at them, and they should see his face. That's how beautiful Yosef was. Chazal tell us no one ever looked in the history of the world as beautiful as Yosef for a man. And therefore, the greatness of Yosef was that they would throw things just for him to gaze. And he never looked up, Chazal tells us. And we're going to do that medrash with the Yalkut Shimoni in a minute. The greatness of Yosef, he torn away from his parents, from his father, torn away from the brothers, torn away from the Yiddishkeit. That was the greatness of Yosef, the Torah that he learned from his father, stuck in a very sick place, embarrassed, thrown into prison, a slave. Yet never did he lose thought of who he was and where he came from, and chas v'shalom sin even minutely. So what does the Medrash say? It says like this: Banos Ada Ali Shor, Medrash Rabin, Parshas Vayechi. It's Kapitel Yud Ches. It's the piece called Yud Ches, and it says like this: Banos Ada Ali Shor. The women would throw ornaments and climb high mountains just to see Yosef. Ata motzi b'shar sheyotze Yosef limlo hamitzrayim. When Yosef went out, and he would be the ruler of Mitzrayim, and he would travel. Hoya benos melachim mitzitzotz alav. They would try to gaze upon him. Derech hacharkin, through windows and through walls, through actually standing on walls. Hoya mashlichos alav sheirin v'katlim v'zomis v'tabos. And they would throw on him to he should look up to be like almost like awoken, to see what was thrown at him, that he should see women. In order that they should be able to gaze upon him and see him. Even though he would not look at them or gaze upon them. HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him, you did not lift up your eyes and to gaze by your life. I'm going to make a complete parsha for you regarding inheritance, which is the parsha of Benos Lavchad. There's an entire parsha which tells us about Yerusha, and this telling us about Yerusha was all about what was given to Yosef as a matana, that a whole parsha was given for Yosef for the fact that he didn't look up. That is the Medrash Rabbah, Parshas Vayechi, and Yud Ches. Now I want to mention the Yalkut Shimoni, and then we're going to end with that. Very powerful Yalkut Shimoni. I actually say it over to my public school, high school kids that are ready for it. I've said it in a public school once before, a few times actually, years ago, but I think it's very powerful, and we'll end with that, and we'll show the greatness of Yosef. Now, Benos Se'eda Ali Shur, it says, Yalkut Shimoni on Parshas Vayechi, Benos Se'eda Ali Shur, Shoya Mitzviyas Benos Malachim Evakshim Liris Pnei Yosef. They wanted to see the face of Yosef. V'lo Tola Einav Ba'achs Mehen. And he never even looked at one of them. And he never, obviously, when he never saw them, he didn't think of them. And he never thought of any of them. He was zocha to inherit two inheritances, one in this world and one in the next world. And Chazal tell us that because of Yosef's not actually looking ever in Mitzrayim at any of the women in Mitzrayim, he was zocha that the ayin ra is not sholet on Yosef. That the ayin ra, the evil eye, is not sholet on Yosef because he watched his eyes. Therefore, no ayin hara could be sholet on Yosef Hatzadik and his mishpacha, because he watched his eyes. He was zocha for the watching of the eyes. Now I'm going to go to the story of Ramasya ben Cheresh. Ramasya ben Cheresh was a Tana in the Mishnah. He's in the Gemara, mentioned a few times, but a very, very holy Tana. And he's called Ben Cheresh, the son of a blind person. Why is he called the son of a blind person? A lot of times Chazal will tell you a name of a tzaddik, a name of a Tana, of an Armora, and really the name is not really the son of a particular individual, but the son of an action or a behavior or a good midah that this Tana had, and he would be known as like Ben Tzitzis HaKana. There are many people that have names of people, Saginor, Beloshan Saginor, the Lashon of Meir, that the certain person that was blind, but he's given a title of something that he was and not actually a child of that particular name of a person. So Ramasya ben Cheresh, Shahaya Yosef bebeis hamedrash, that he used to sit in the base medrash, va'oisik b'Torah, and he would always be learning Torah day and night. V'haya ziv panav doime lechama, and the shine, the radiance of his face was doma to the sun. V'klaster panav, and the image of his face, whatever that means, doma l'malachei hasharis, had the image of the malachei hasharis, the malachim. Why? The Yalkut Shimoni brings down, Shemeyamav lo'nasa einav li'isha ba'olam. He never, ever noticed a woman that was not his wife, obviously. And I do think he did get married, but it meant that he never saw a woman that was not his wife in his lifetime. Pam Achad, one time, over Satan. The Satan was going through his paperwork, so-called, and was looking to see at different people that he needed to, to test, to challenge, to find out their information, to see what they're chayev, like judgment. And Pam Achad over Satan with his kanabo, and was jealous when he saw his resume. He saw Ramatzi ben Cheresh's resume. He said, "Wow, this person never saw a woman in his life." Amar, he said to himself, "Efsha adam kamoy zeh." Is it possible for a person to be like that? Shaloi chata, that never sinned in his life, to look at something he should not see in his lifetime. The Satan asked HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ribono shel Olam, Rabbi Masya ben Cheresh, Mahu lefanecha? What is he to you? How do you hold of him? Amalai tzaddik gamahu. He is the complete package of a tzaddik. He is a tzaddik gamer. Amalafanav. So the Satan said, Tain li rishus ve'asi tanu. Give me permission and I'm going to test him. And I'll come with my greatest arsenal of testing him. Amalai, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, in ata yachalai, go. Ata yachalai, you won't be able to. Afal pikein amalai leich. You're not going to be able to get him, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was made on Ramasya ben Cheresh that no one could ever get him. But he said, go anyway. That Satan appeared as a woman that I can't explain what this is, but a woman that never appeared as the beautiful woman in the world, like this particular woman. Except it was a woman, I guess, Nama Machais Tuval was the sister of Tuval Kayan, right? Achais Tuval Kayan, that was supposed to be very beautiful, and no one was as beautiful as her in the history of Judaism, of life, of the world. And this Satan appeared like this woman. She told Malachi Hasharis that even the Malachi Hasharis, when they came down, they sinned. It says when they came down, before Parshas Lech Lecha, when they came down, they actually sinned. It says the B'nai Malachim, they sinned. What did B'nai Malachim? What did they sin in? They sinned with this woman. They the Malachim couldn't control themselves, and yet this Satan appeared like that. When he saw the Satan appeared as this beautiful woman, he didn't know. He turned his face. And he turned his face this way and that way, backwards. He came to the left side. He kept turning his head back and forth, not to notice. Amar, he said, Reb Masya ben Cheresh said, Misyari ani, I am worried, Shemri Skaber la Yetzirah. Maybe the Yetzer Hara will get to me eventually if this continues to happen. Ma asa oisei tzaddik. What did this tzaddik do? Kara la oisei talmud. He called the oisei talmud. I have to understand who this oisei talmud is. But he called a certain talmud that was being misharishim at the time. Shoy misharis lafanav, that was actually taking care of him at the time. Amalei leich, go v'havali eish u'masamer aviloi masmirin v'noistim be'enav. Bring fire and spikes. And I want to spike out my eyes. When the Satan saw how Ramas ben Cheresh asked for fire, in other words, they shouldn't get infected, and with the spikes poked his eyes out, the Satan disappeared. He was so shocked at this greatness that he disappeared. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu called Rafal. Amalai leich l'rape es Ramas ben Cheresh. Go heal Ramas ben Cheresh. He got up for Amad Lafanav and stood before him. Amalai, so the Malach stood before Ramasya ben Cheresh. Amalai mi'ata. Ramasya asked, who are you? Amalai ani who? Rafal. I am this person, Rafal. I am this Malach Rafal. Sheshalchani HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'rape say necha. Then HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent me to heal your eyes. Amalai, Ramasya ben Cheresh said, no. Hanicheni, leave me. Leave me the way it is. Masha haya, what happened. And I saw Mefarish that he was worried that the Satan would come again. Because you'll see later what happens. So he said, leave it. What happened, leave it that way. I'm just worried that chas v'shalom, who knows what can happen if I get back my eyesight again. So Malach Rafal went back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he said to me, this is what Masya told me. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Rafal, go back to him and tell him, Ani Arev, I will be your guarantor. I will be the one to make sure that this will never happen to you again. That Yetzer Hara will never have permission to come after you again. Miyad Rapa Aisei. In that moment, he got healed. Al achas kama v'kama be'esh chavera, if somebody doesn't look at women, and obviously the wife of a friend of his, in other words, obviously somebody that he thinks he's close to, that he's friendly with, ein hayetzar shalad by, the yetzar will not be shalad. And that's what it means, and that's what it means what it means to a person to be makbid on his watching of his eyes. So Yosef HaTzadik had a lot of great character traits. He was a Talmud Chacham. All of Yaakov Avinu's Torah was given through Yosef HaTzadik. He was Torah. He was also Anav Mikol Adam. He was the most humble of people. He always had Hashem on his mouth. Never took credit for anything he did. Always Hashem did this. Hashem sent me here. Hashem sent me here. He said it to power. He said it to slaves. He said it to people. Always never taking credit for his wisdom, for his greatness, for anything he's done. Yet the trait that Chazaq liked to talk about mostly was Yosef's trait of self-control. And we should learn as we make this week's Parshas is going to be Parshas Chazaq, the end of the book of Yesharim, as it says, of the righteous ones, which is this of Sefer Bereshis, where we end the Midrashim of Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, of Yosef, Shvatim, and we start a new era of Mitzrayim with Moshe Rabbeinu, who should take with us at the end the greatness of Yosef HaTzadik, which is a person should be makbid on his self-control in all areas, not just in Shmiras Hanayim, not just in things that are regarding Ishus, regarding womanly things, but even in his daily life, self-control in anger, self-control in his gaiva, self-control in his not doing things he should be doing at the right time, he should be doing it. And I give you all a bracha that we should be zaycha, that the geula shlema which is at its doorsteps. I do believe so. Who am I to believe so? I'm nobody. But I do believe, obviously, that every day approaches, we are closer to the geula shlema, and we should all come together and be zaycha to celebrate and read the Sefer Bereshis, the whole Sefer Bereshis in Eretz Yisrael. Amen.